Well, good afternoon to you. It is now 3:06 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Also joining us today, Chris Smith, the Congressman from New Jersey. We'll talk about the drone story. That's at 3:30. John Eastman, former attorney for President Trump. We will talk about how that Department of Government Efficiency can tackle that out-of-control government. That's at 4 o'clock. 4:30, Emily Jashinsky is here as President Trump is made Time's Man of the Year. I know, they say person now. It's stupid. He's Man of the Year. And then Julie Kelly joins us at 5:30. A lot to discuss with her as it relates to the way the January 6 defendants are being treated and the breaking news on the FBI's involvement on January 6. It's all ahead today on the Vince Coglianese Show. President Trump in New York today, the first president since Ronald Reagan to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. I thought he was going to let it go forever. He finally stopped, but you just hold your finger on that plunger and the bell just keeps ringing. I thought he was going to go for hours. He had a great time. And right behind him, they had the big Time Person of the Year logo behind him. J.D. Vance was up there. So it was a great morning in New York City. President Trump speaking to people there, working the floor, just like he often does at all of these places he goes. And he did this interview with Time, and I've been going through it, and I've got to say, right away, the priority clearly to President Trump as he looks back on the election and why he won. One, he says the Democrats ran on the same old nonsense. That's why they lost. But two, he says the reason I won, the border. The Democrats didn't get it, he said. They didn't get it. And the reporter asks, what do you mean when you say that the Democrats didn't get it? What do you mean by that? And he responds, I don't think they got the feel of the country. The country was angry because of immigration, because of the people. You know, millions and millions of people, he said. I was saying it could be 21 million people. They were saying a much lesser number, but it wasn't a much lesser number. But even if it was irrelevant because they were allowing anybody to come into our country. They are right now. They opened it up again. Do you see what's going on? They're coming. They're pouring up through Mexico and other places. And they weren't using common sense. I said, we've become the party of common sense. As an example, they really don't want to see men playing in women's sports. And this one, they don't want to see, as another example, open borders. They want to see people come in. Everybody's okay with that. And I am certainly. I want to have a lot of people coming because we're going to bring back a lot of jobs. We'll bring record numbers of jobs, said the president. And we'll do it through good taxing policy and, using some basic business intelligence. We're going to bring back record jobs, he said. Record companies are going to come into our country. They're not going to be able to steal our companies anymore. And I talked about that. But I differed maybe perhaps from you people. I thought the economy was a big factor, especially the real economy, which is the economy of going out and buying groceries or buying a car or buying a house, which was, between interest rates and between costs. As an example, the cost of a house is a big chunk of the cost of the house is just the approval process and the regulations. But he says, I think a bigger factor was the border. I think the border, and, I won it in 2016 on the border, and I fixed the border, says Trump, and it was really fixed. And they came in and they just dislodged everything that I did, and it became far worse. The border. I mean, he's right about the fact that the border was a primary motivating factor for voters, according to all of the available public polling. It was usually neck and neck, the economy and illegal immigration, an open, porous border that led to all sorts of downstream effects, whether they be economic, to cities being completely overwhelmed, to crime rates going up, all of the various problems that came with kicking the border wide open. And voters rallied to his side. Voters of all colors and backgrounds and ages and genders all rallied to his side and elected him to be the 47th president of the United States. So he's right about that. And today we have a number of stories on how the left is handling this, in particular the border. One of the stories is that the Biden administration is at the moment, at this very moment, actively sabotaging President Trump's border agenda. Now, President Trump at this has succeeded so far since he was elected president this time at slowing the flow of illegal migration into the United States by threatening Mexico with tariffs if they continue to allow humans to pour into our country. And they've gotten the message, and it's slowed things down dramatically. But the Daily Wire reports today that the Biden administration is looking to stop Trump from building his wall. Excuse me, our wall. Here's the headline. Daily Wire, James Lalino reporting this. Exclusive. Biden races to sell off border wall parts before Trump takes office. That's where we are. We're in this period of meddling by the outgoing Biden administration. The Biden administration is using its final weeks to haul a massive amount of border wall materials away from the southern border to be sold off in a government auction, an apparent effort to hinder President-elect Donald Trump's effort to secure the border, the Daily Wire has learned. Videos obtained exclusively by the Daily Wire from a U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agent show that unused sections of the wall are being hauled away on the back of flatbed trucks from a section of the border just south of Tucson, a hotspot for illegal crossings during the Biden administration. The agent estimates that up to half of a mile per day of unused border wall is being moved, a half mile per day. They're taking it from 3 stations, said the Border Patrol agent: Nogales, Tucson, and 3 Points. The goal is to move all of it off the border before Christmas. Trump, of course, made clear during his campaign he intends to finish construction of the wall, making use of the materials that have remained untouched at the border since President Joe Biden took office in 2021. If the material brought to the border during his first term is sold off, it will significantly delay any progress on one of Trump's flagship campaign promises at the border. There's a government contractor involved here called DP Trucking, LLC, and you can see the video. It's on the Daily Wire's website. The trucks are transporting the pieces of the wall north on Interstate 19 to Pinal Air Park in Marana, Arizona, where they're being auctioned off through GovPlanet, a surplus government equipment auction marketplace. Quote, they just started taking all the wall that wasn't used, which is still totally good and usable, and they started taking it northbound, said the agent. They're pulling it all off the border. The owner of the trucking company is a guy called Harold Lambeth. He confirmed to the Daily Wire in a phone call that his company is transporting the unused border wall sections north away from the construction sites. He said he's unable to disclose any further information about the work. There's video of the GovPlanet auction site where the material is being taken, and it shows seemingly endless piles of unused border wall material. Another video taken from one of the construction sites on the border shows the trucking company's vehicles passing through with the same style of unused border wall stacked up on the back of their flatbeds. The wall, what are they selling the wall for? Well, the auction website shows that sales occurred as recently as December 4th for these materials. Let's see here. GovPlanet has online auctions set for December 11th, that was yesterday, and December 18th for more of the border wall material, which is listed on the company's website as 32.91 feet by 7.91 feet steel bollard wall sections with grout. That's how it's listed on the auction website. The bidding for each section of wall panels is set to begin at only $5, according to the website. We're auctioning off massive, massive sections of wall for $5 a piece right now. The Biden administration is selling it off to get rid of it. So in other words, it's not actually even designed to make money for you, for the federal government's use. It's just sabotage. Destroy any chance of building the wall quickly and sell the pieces off for pennies on the dollar. That's what they're up to. Now, because the election is over, there are a number of things coming out, or at least admissions being made that weren't made prior to Election Day. And that involves the border as well. There's a New York Times reporter by the name of David Leonard, who you may know from some of his COVID coverage. Usually what would happen is the world would go insane. Conservatives would say, it's insane. We shouldn't be doing that insane thing. And then a year later, this New York Times reporter, David Leonard, would begin admitting, yes, that thing is insane, like putting masks on your face or putting plastic up in your business in order to stop COVID, those types of things. So he would come out and he would admit it usually a year after you already knew it. And once he did, that's when the Biden administration would change course. Oh, well then, if David Leonard at the New York Times says it, we should change course. The pattern happened over and over and over again. And now that same New York Times reporter is admitting that it's the Biden administration's fault that all of these millions of illegals poured into our country. Where was that piece before Election Day? Well, you know the answer. But here's what David Leonard writes today in a thread on X. There's a companion piece in the New York Times. He says, some defenders of the Biden administration continue to argue that its policies weren't the main reason that immigration soared, or even argue that the administration didn't actually loosen policy. These claims are inconsistent with the evidence, says the New York Times reporter. Do you remember the number of times that the White House came out and they said, well, it's a worldwide phenomenon. Worldwide, there's all sorts of upheaval, and migration is a worldwide phenomenon. They said the same thing about inflation. They said, people are just traveling all over the place, and the United States has got some of the incoming too. So we're not different than anywhere else. That's not true. This New York Times reporter lays out a lot of the details. These are things you already know. So point one, he says, the Biden administration loosened immigration policy in many ways. It celebrated doing so. The changes weren't a secret. And he, in fact, links to executive orders and press releases where they're bragging about loosening the border. He says, start with the Democratic Party's 2020 platform on immigration. It talked almost exclusively about making it easier for people to enter the country, a stark change from what he refers to as Obama's more moderate approach. The left is still angry that Obama deported anyone. And by the way, just to be clear on Obama's deportations, for those, if you ever hear that number, the Obama administration changed a classification for deportations. Literally, it was the people that they were catching right at the border and shoving right back out the border. For the first time, they started calling those official deportations. And that padded the numbers, leading people to this impression that Obama was, at the time, the left was referring to him as the deporter in chief. They were so angry at him. But the numbers were padded. At any rate, they say the 2020, David Leonard at the New York Times says, the 2020 Democratic platform never mentions border security, and most mentions of border are actually about expanding entry. And then he goes to Biden's campaign era back in 2020. His main message was, come. We're a nation that says, quote, if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come, he said at the debate. Once Biden took office, he almost immediately loosened immigration policy. He ended Trump's remain in Mexico. Biden rescinded an order that called for the prompt removal of undocumented immigrants. He halted construction of the wall. All those moves were in February of 2021, says David Leonard of the New York Times. The loosening continued later in the year. In June, Biden reversed Trump's narrowing of asylum. Then he goes on with some throat clearing on behalf of the left. David says, to be clear, there are strong arguments in favor of these policy moves. No, there aren't. There are no strong arguments in favor of these policy moves. And he says there are strong arguments against them. Yes, there are. But Biden obviously loosened immigration policy. He did so in multiple significant ways. He promised it as a candidate, and he enacted it as president. Can you believe what you're hearing right now? Obviously, you know this. We've been having this conversation for the entire Biden presidency. Here's a New York Times reporter, for the first time that I can detect, saying it in public well after the political consequences are gone. The election's over. So the illegal immigration crisis, well, yes, you can blame Biden. In fact, he owns a significant amount of the responsibility for all of this illegal migration. And one more thing. You dig into the actual official piece on the New York Times website today. And the headline is, recent immigration surge has been the largest in U.S. history. The largest surge of foreign nationals pouring into our country in the entire history of the United States of America just happened now under Biden. Annual net migration, the number of people coming to the country minus the number who are leaving, averaged 2.4 million people from 2021 to 2023. That's per year. Total net migration during the Biden administration is likely to exceed 8 million people. 8 million. And they say, you want to know how many of those were considered illegal? That's just by the New York Times' numbers. They say about 60% of the immigrants who have entered the country since 2021 have done so without legal authorization. About 60%. Now, I can assure you that's an undercount. They're also kind of glossing over the fact that they're lumping in legal migration into these numbers. For frame of reference, on most years, we average 1 million legal immigrants into the United States. That should not be lumped in with illegal aliens. Additionally, the Biden administration has changed certain categories of foreign nationals who shouldn't be in the country at all. They've helped them in via something called the CBP One app to make it appear that they're not illegal aliens because the Biden administration trafficked them in. But once again, now that the damage, the chance of this being a political liability for Biden is behind them, the New York Times feels perfectly comfortable telling you something about the scale of the massive wave of illegal humanity that's poured into this country since Joe Biden took office. All right. We have a lot of mouths moving right now on those drones that have been hovering over the state of New Jersey, but not a lot of new and useful information, unfortunately. The White House today addressing it. They sent the adult press secretary out to answer some questions. We'll share some of that with you. And we're going to speak to New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith in just moments. He's very concerned about what's happening above the Garden State. He'll give us the latest from his perspective in Congress. Hold on. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 3:35 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, John Eastman joins us at 4 o'clock. Emily Jashinsky is here at 4:30. And then Julie Kelly joins us at 5:30. I've got a lot of January 6th news. Yes, indeed. Some big updates on that story coming up at 5:30 with Julie. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The White House today put the adult press secretary out to answer some questions, and he said that he was asked about these New Jersey drones, and he was asked specifically, hey, do we have government images? Does the government have images of these drones up in the air? And here's his awful, useless answer.
On the drones, does the U.S. government have any of its own imagery or video of these systems?
I'm not aware that we have U.S. government produced imagery ourselves, but as I said in my opening statement, we have certainly done thorough analysis of the existing imagery.
Like from people's cell phones that we're seeing? Basically, with what you're looking at, how can you credibly tell people that there is no public safety threat, there's no national security threat, that there's no reason to believe that a foreign government is involved?
Because the analysis thus far, in an investigation that is ongoing, has not revealed any national security or malicious intent or criminal activity. But, Jackie, I would remind you, we're at the beginning here, not the end. There's a lot more work to be done, and we're working closely with state and local authorities to gain more information. I would argue that we're moving pretty well here.
She said at the end, it seems slow. Yeah, that's for sure. You know, the sightings began nearly a month ago, November 18th, near Morris County, New Jersey. And the FBI has been receiving reports ever since then. The FAA has been receiving reports ever since then. And you heard John Kirby just say, we're at the beginning, not the end. No, you're not. You're nowhere near the beginning. That was almost a month ago. Joining us now to discuss from New Jersey, the Congressman Chris Smith is here. He represents the 4th Congressional District in the Garden State, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, sir. Good to have you with us.
Vince, great to be on with you. I love your show. Whenever I'm going back and forth, I listen to it, so thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So John Kirby today saying there's no reason to believe there's any threat here from these drones, yet simultaneously says, I'm not sure that the government has any pictures of them whatsoever. What? Oh, God. This is the craziest story ever.
Same John Kirby, Vince. Same John Kirby. I did a series of hearings on Nicaragua and the terrible imprisonment of Bishop Alvarez. And a reporter asked him about that, and he goes, I'm going to have to take that question and get back to you. I'm not tracking that particular case. Ortega is a cruel dictator. Hundreds of people were arrested, including the top bishop, and he didn't have a clue about it. When he was asked in another instance about why two of our high officials were in Beijing during the Tiananmen Square remembrance, when we all remember it, he goes, I think I'm a lot less worried about the date on the calendar. Are you kidding me? China has erased that date as the Tiananmen Square massacre, and this leader in our government is telling us nothing to see here, and he's saying the same thing right now. It's outrageous. It really is outrageous how they poo-poo and trivialize important things. I mean, not to know about the Nicaraguan leadership. Now, to most people, it's not common, but he is in a position where, he's advising. He should be in the know, and he didn't have a clue.
Right.
And I had just had the big hearing on it, and it was the fourth one that I had on Nicaraguan dictatorship. In this Congress. So,
Congressman, on this issue, it seems like there's no sense of urgency whatsoever, and maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe the federal government doesn't want to spend a lot of time dwelling on this and are kind of annoyed that they're being forced to. What do you know about this as a member of Congress, and especially from New Jersey? What have you learned?
Well, Vince, I spent many hours out on the beach and obviously throughout my district talking to people who had, including a Coast Guard commander who told me that one of his 47-foot rescue craft boat had many of these trailing it right on its stern. And I said, well, what's your rules of engagement? I mean, that sounds like a hostile act to have, these drones the size of, in some cases, of automobiles and even larger, right on your tail. He goes, we don't have rules of engagement. So I'm very concerned about this laissez-faire attitude when around Picatinny, which is a very, very important base for weapons. We have a joint base that's in my district, and I actually contacted the joint base and asked them about it. And they said, well, if they come over our perimeter, we know how to take them down. But I said, well, they're in proximity to you. What authority do you need? And they said, well, that would have to come from the top. So I've written the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, and asked him to grant that authority. I've spent time with we have really great law enforcement officials who are out there tracking these things, and including Sean Golden, who's the sheriff of Monmouth County, and the sheriff of Ocean is his name is Mastronardi. So I was with them, and Mastronardi, he's had one of his person who saw 50 of them, 50 drones come in off the ocean, and reported thusly. And they're saying, well, we have nothing to see here. I think there needs to be a very heightened sense that this poses a threat.
Yes.
We don't know who it's coming from, but drone warfare has become, a very serious escalation, both by China, certainly by Putin in real terms in actual firing, in a war, and of course by Tehran, by the Iranians.
It sounds like to me, though, Congressman, as a congressman from New Jersey, that you're sort of in the same position most of us are in. You don't know much about this. You are doing your own research. You're talking to local officials and sheriffs, which is great, but they're not giving you any briefings. Like nobody from the Biden administration has sat down with all of, say, the representatives from New Jersey and said, here's what's going on.
We had such a meeting. It was a Zoom meeting with our governor, and the delegation was on the Zoom, and we had Mayorkas there. And the Secretary of Homeland Security did not have a clue. Deer in the headlights. And I get angry because the people in my district are being put at risk, I believe. And if they're not, let's get answers and allay any fears, legitimate, well-founded fears that they have. But he didn't know. If I hear one more time that they don't know, and they all of a sudden go dark if anything gets close to them like a helicopter in terms of being able to surveil them, that suggests that this isn't Amazon testing its latest way of delivering a package.
No, that's a key point. And in terms of I think at least we can rule some things out. One of them is that this is some sort of good faith commercial enterprise that's doing something completely legal and is on the up and up. The reason I feel we can rule that out is because if it was Amazon, they would already have taken credit for it. They would say, hey, look, everybody, the things you're seeing, that's Amazon. But nobody's done that, in fact. And you're seeing, and this is not a small quantity. This is a massive number of drones. In other words, somebody's spending a lot of money to put them up in the air, and we still have no answers nearly a month out.
No, you're absolutely right, and they don't have that sense of urgency. Now I hear that they're saying that they don't have the capability at Fort Dix. I was told on a phone call that they do, the capability to bring something like this down. And why are we allowing this trespass right above homes, right above installations to continue? It's broadcasting to our adversaries abroad. We're very porous. We
Yes.
do not have either the will or the capability. I think we have the capability to do something. And the FBI, in that hearing that was held by Congressman Pfluger, who did a great job just a couple days ago, they said, okay, what's their budget? $500,000. That doesn't even buy a desk. What does that buy? Now, Homeland Security has more, I know, and I'm not entirely sure what DOD has, but they have a capability that's very real because our ships are being attacked by drones and missiles by the Houthis, in the Mediterranean. So, we've got to deploy it to protect the homeland.
Yes.
And if this turns out to be nothing, well, allay the fears of many people who are calling my office. Very responsible people, from mayors to just the average person who works hard for a living and says, I just saw a whole group of these
Yes.
coming down in constellation, in formation, I should say. And they're big. They're not these little things that you buy in Walmart.
Yeah. Well, and it's leading people to be, paranoid, rightfully so, about what's in the air and what's over them. And we're seeing all sorts of videos come out. And sometimes you're like, I see these videos, I'm like, oh, that just looks like a jetliner that somebody confused for a drone, and that can happen. But there's no question that there's been a lot of drones in your district, in New Jersey, hovering low to the ground. They say the size of a desk, the size of an SUV, the size of a small bus.
Yep,
I'm hearing
different sizes.
Yeah, I'm hearing these reports and the technology in terms of what can be done here. We had Congressman Mark Green on yesterday, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee.
Sure.
And he was suggesting pretty heavily that the government does have the technology to hack these drones in midair and take control of them. And that may very well happen in the days ahead in New Jersey. Do you have any sense that that's going to take place soon?
Yes, they do. My understanding is that they do have that capability. There's been concerns that this may be so sophisticated that they evade that kind of action. Again, that would suggest this is an evil source that this is coming from. And I think they're probing. Look at that spy balloon. Do you remember how ridiculous that was?
Yeah.
As they went over one base after another, including our B-2 bomber base, and they could have easily done an EMP. And I actually gave a floor speech quoting some real experts who said how foolish it is that we're allowing them that kind of proximity. And we just say, oh, look at that. It's a weather balloon. I'll sell you the Brooklyn Bridge if you believe that was a weather balloon.
Yeah.
Because it would go and hover over one base after another. They're probing, I believe, and I hope I'm proven wrong, but I think, countries that wish us ill, and I chair the China Commission in the United States House and Senate. It's a bicameral commission. I've had 106 hearings. I'm barred from going there by Xi Jinping's Chinese Communist Party. I'm barred. I can't get a visa anymore because of the human rights issues I raise. And if we think that they don't wish us ill, I mean, they want Taiwan in the worst way.
Yes.
They took Hong Kong. So it's like this naivete on the part of the White House or what it might be enabling. And to see John Kirby just, almost moments ago talking about this in such a dismissive way is disgusting. He can't do that. You ought to say, we're on this. We're using every military asset we have to determine the truth. And if the truth is a bad one, we will take action. Instead, law enforcement, and in talking to the law enforcement people, and again, I have some great sheriffs in Monmouth and Ocean County. They're not equipped. They have training, but they don't have the equipment, and they don't have the authority legally to take actions that would be beyond just trying to say, here they are. I had one top cop tell me that he was skeptical. Then he saw a dozen of them. And he said, oh, my God, this is real. And, so we're hearing it more and more. And it's just, I mean, the White House, as it has been on so many issues. Not Kirby, but it was Mayorkas who kept telling us how secure the border was. Well, we all knew that it's an absolute lie. And now we're getting another obfuscation of the truth.
So, okay, that brings me to the question, because the Biden administration has been notorious in the number of lies it's told the public, easily provable lies. So what do you suspect is happening now? Are they lying about what they know, or are they truly feckless in the face of a pressing domestic crisis?
I think it's both. And if you don't know, one of the headlines is New Jersey drones, is a Fox News thing, says are lawfully operated manned aircraft, White House says. Are you kidding me? Who's operating it? Don't assure the people that there's nothing to see here and everything is fine and dandy when you really don't know. And they turn their lights off and they go dark and they apparently become more stealth than we're accustomed to in terms of detection. Well, every asset we have should be saying, okay, we have a lot of critical infrastructure in New Jersey, including, nuclear facilities. One of them is right near where I was on the beach the other day. It's no longer operational, but it's all the nuclear material is stored there because no material goes anywhere because Yucca Mountain has never been opened. It's well encased, but there are risks here. And don't treat us, like we can't handle the truth. We need the truth, and we need an aggressiveness on the part of our DOD. It's almost like we just had a hearing yesterday, and Michael McCall chaired a great hearing, another one, on the egregiously flawed exodus out of Afghanistan. And, the lies that went on there, and I had asked in the last time he was up, the Secretary of State, why did Biden lie in a phone call to Ghani, who was then the president, and said, make it look better than it really is. We went, and then they wondered why people weren't leaving, Americans especially, because they had been reassured there was a 300,000-man Iraqi pro-Western army, and all things were fine. Well, and then we had our president, and Reuters broke that story, and they wouldn't confirm or deny it. Those kind of things, just tell the damn truth. And I can't believe it, because this is my constituents now and my family and others that are at risk, and of course New Jerseyans and all Americans by extension. There's no room for this kind of incompetence or, again, obfuscating the truth, which is what I think they're doing.
Okay, one last thing, Congressman. And Congressman Chris Smith, thank you for being here for this.
Thank you, Vince.
You just mentioned that the White House is insisting that, as far as they know, the drones are being legally flown.
Yes.
And if that's the case, isn't it a requirement that a drone, especially of that size, be registered with the FAA? That it have
it's
markings?
I'm saying that's the case, and there should be, obviously, records that could be ascertained. They don't even know who's flying them. I asked Mayorkas. I asked the first question when he briefed us, the members of the New Jersey delegation, on a Zoom. I said, why can't we just follow one or more of these to their point of origination, which we do think is offshore? Because 50 of them came in offshore just 3 days ago, observed by a police officer. 50 of them. Well, they didn't come from another continent. They came probably from a boat or some kind of vessel. And he had no answer. I said, why can't we follow them? We've got unbelievable sophistication, unless that's all a bill of goods.
It's 2024. This is the most ridiculous story I've ever heard. We can't have a single government drone up in the air and capture the registration number on the side of the drone, which will lead to a federal government record that shows you who owns it, so you can establish. The whole thing is really crazy to me, Congressman, and I can't believe it's been a month of this.
I can't either.
And here we are with almost as much information as we had a month ago.
I know. And they, the aggressive denial, Kirby's denials are ridiculous, but to me, that's his pattern. He's done that before. And they suggest that, I know a lot of people, followed what happened at Tiananmen Square massacre. That is just a date on the calendar when our people are visiting in Beijing that day, high officials. Come on, have some sensitivity. But fast forward to right now, this is a matter of national security, and the Department of Defense ought to be absolutely involved in this. Don't just, And it's not a law enforcement thing yet. Law enforcement stepping up, particularly local. I have a bill I'm introducing on Monday that will provide authority to local law enforcement to be far more engaged than they're allowed to be right now. Because, again, where's DOD? They're AWOL. Absent without leave, not to be found.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. Congressman Chris Smith, will you please keep throttling these people till we get some answers?
We'll keep trying. I'll let you know, Vince, if we get
Thank
any.
you.
But, again, thank you for having me on. And again, you always have a great show.
Thank you very much. That's New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith with all of the latest that he's hearing. I appreciate that. Can the Department of Government Efficiency actually succeed in reining in our out-of-control government? John Eastman will join us in just a moment, former attorney for President Trump. He'll be with us to discuss.